Good evening, everybody. It's Saturday, the 10th of April at around 8:10 p.m. You might hear a little bit of background noise. I have my windows open, and my neighbors are having a nice little party. So you can't knock them for that. But if I close the windows, it's going to get awfully warm in here. So my apologies ahead of time. Well, it's been about 2 weeks since we last saw each other. And a lot's been going on. We know that obviously the stimulus package has passed, but just like anything else, funny things happen on the way to the park. And tonight we're going to discuss some of the things that are kind of worrisome. Number one, we're going to talk about Joe Manchin tonight because he's a real problem. And we're also going to talk about our favorite congressman from Florida, Matt Gaetz. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my compadre from, I guess he's from Arlington, Virginia, and that's David Price. Dave, how you doing?
Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm fine.
Welcome, welcome to another Saturday night here. Well, I'm keeping my windows closed because our parties get pretty wild here. None that I go to, but our neighbors. I'll listen to your party, and we'll see where this show leads. We never know. By the way, I think I speak for everybody. Condolences on the death of your mother, which
Thank
is
you.
why, for everybody, why we weren't here last week. And Brian is a trooper, and he was going to go on, and we kind of talked about it and said, no, I think it's better sometimes, even though we like to do, sometimes we like to bury ourselves in our work. And
Right, I was basically, thank you, Dave. I do appreciate that. Last week, I actually would have gone on. However, I had to prepare a video for the funeral home, and I want to do it right. And I like working with video, and I knew I wasn't going to finish it in time, so it was just as best. And Dave told me, now let's just wait till next week anyway. So that was good, and we
and actually, it gave me something to do on a Saturday night, which I never have. So I was able to walk back and forth between the bedroom and the kitchen. We have a full bath, and then I visited the bathroom. I visited our half bath, the kitchen and the living room and the dining room are all, it's open floor concept. And so I got to see the whole apartment on Saturday night.
Judy make you any cookies for Saturday night?
Well, let me think. Where was Saturday night? No, actually, oh, that was a lie. I'm preparing to switch to Republicanism. I'm learning how to lie. Actually, Brian, as you know, I was in your, what do we say, my old neck of the woods.
That's
your
right.
neck of
I
the woods.
forgot about that story.
So we would have we both would have been in Cumberland County. Fascinating story. I may or may not talk about it tonight. It doesn't reflect real well on our county, but it does reflect on what Republicans, I think, are doing to the nation in terms of the pandemic and the economy and that type of thing. So we may get into that later. We may not. I'm back. I'm here in Washington, D.C. This week. Got a chance to go into the district a few times and see what's going on in there. And it is much, much different. I'll just give you the quick view. It really does. It's funny how quickly we get into the normal. And the normal for D.C., the second half of 2020, of course, the first abnormal was the pandemic, but then the normal became protesters everywhere. And after spending a good portion of 2 days in the district this week, was able to encounter exactly 0 protesters. So I don't know what that means in the long run, but right now I'm going to assume that people are seeing how Joe Biden is going to perform. And so far, no one other than the Republicans have taken offense to it much. And I think the stats bear that out. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're not charter members of the Joe Biden fan club. However, I'm a charter member of Anybody But Trump. And I'm also a charter member of Anybody But Republicans. And I also like leaders who seem to have a heart to go along with their head. And Joe Biden, at this time, fits all those characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, I'm going to take us back a couple of months, actually right after the election. And I think what bothers me about what I'm going to show you is the fact, for number one, it's on Fox News, and number two, it's Joe Manchin and the interplay. And this is going to relate to, obviously what's going on with the infrastructure bill right now. I don't like a Democrat playing to the Republican audience. That's a real problem for me. So we'll just take a look at it. And again, it's not so much what he says, but just look at him
Sure.
when this goes on. I think that it gives us a clue about Joe Manchin. It almost has smacks of Jeff Van Drew, and that's a real problem. So let me see if I can dig this up. I may have that echo when I switch, Dave. So
No problem.
Hold on for a little bit, and we'll see what happens. All right. Okay. Loop back audio. All right. Here we go. And we'll play it.
Tactics are being used right now, Brett. If both of the Georgia senators were elected from the Democratic Party, then that would be 50-50 if both Dan Sullivan and Tom Tillis win. 50-50 means there's a tie. But if one senator does not vote on a Democratic side, there is no tie and there is no bill. So I commit to you tonight, and I commit to all of your viewers and everyone else that's watching, I want to lay those fears, I want to rest those fears for you right now, because when they talk about whether it be packing the courts or ending the filibuster, I will not vote to do that. I will not vote to pack the courts, I think, and I will not vote to end the filibuster. Brett, this system, the Senate, was so unique body in the world. It was made to work together in a bipartisan way. And once you start breaking down those barriers, then you lose every reason that we are the institution that we are, the most deliberate body.
All right. Okay, Dave, let's talk about this for a second, because, again, this is in November, but it really, I think, is a good thing to look at right now, because it gives us an idea of where this guy is going, because he's obviously pandering to the Fox viewers, and we're also looking, of course, at the fact that I think West Virginia has, I think, a 75% voter rate or whatever it is for Trump. Would you admit we're in trouble, number one, with Manchin?
Well, the interesting thing with Mr. Joe, whom I have heard speak a couple times down here, is when you hear him speak, he sounds very logical. Okay, sounds like he's upholding, kind of this great American tradition. And again, we can't get inside people's heads. He may well believe it. The problem becomes when you look at a country like America right now, and you're seeing that with the filibuster, which basically, I think everybody knows, but at this point, you pretty much need 60 votes to pass anything. So you sometimes can do it with 50 will do it on certain things with the vice president, this time being a Democrat, can swing some things that way. Manchin holds out, especially, it's still holding out for this filibuster. Now, first of all, this is kind of be my theme for tonight. I've been doing a lot of reading. We hold government today, or the rules in the Senate, the White House, as if they've always been. Do you realize, Brian, and I'm sure you do, that basically nothing is the way that the founding fathers established it, right? Because a number of things have been changed. Now, one of the reasons that we had the filibuster initially was so that Southern senators wanted an assurance that slavery would continue. And indeed it did, until 1860, when we go to war, and then, President Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation. The next time the filibuster becomes huge, and it was used periodically before that, but also you saw it a lot in the civil rights movement from, say, 1954 till the Voting Act passed in 65. So the filibuster has never been what Mr. Manchin and some are saying today, that it can be the great equalizer to keep the villains from taking over America. What it does is make it damn near impossible right now to govern. Can you think of any issue, Brian, really? And we'll get to McConnell's statements later. But I mean, I have to laugh sometimes. Someone says, "Oh, I think there's not agreement on anything between the two parties." Right? No, 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 no. Trev, you're right. I try not to attribute, what should I say, motives to people or things, because you really don't know motives. But certainly, West Virginia once was a bastion of the Democratic Party. When the Democratic, I talk real well, don't I? When the Democratic Party
Right?
was the party of the working class and the coal miners. In fact, you can always point to another thing. West Virginia was instrumental in getting John F. Kennedy to be president. I mean, they overlooked. Interesting enough, think about this. They overlooked his Catholicism, which was huge at that point. I mean, we could look at today, and nobody remembers that. There were people in 1959 who said, "There's no way a Catholic would ever get elected president." But and now it's flipped the other way, and that's something that really needs more study. I've been looking into that. Not that I'm the person to study it, but others. How did that happen? The Democrats were the party of the working people, and then they became anathema to the working people. So many of them. So Mr. Manchin seems to be somewhat consistent. He definitely is playing for views. And the question becomes, Brian, I think, is Joe Manchin any better for liberals than having a Republican there?
Right. And what bothered me was this, Dave, because, I mean, you make a good point about that, because that is actually a very deep question, because if you look at the Republicans we have today, he seemingly is better. But on the other hand, he did say something that really upset me, and that was, I think it was on the Axios interview. He said, after watching, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't know the exact
right,
but he said something to the effect, Dave, that January 6th hit him so hard that he knew that that was a change in the society. He doesn't want to have one party ruling, and he said that he will only try to do something that's bipartisan. But I kept thinking, like, so are you basically saying if there were the Civil War, you would kind of like make a deal on slavery? I mean, it seems ridiculous.
Well, Brian, actually, that's a very astute comment, because that's exactly what American government did for the almost you could certainly argue definitely until 1863, from its inception. They made deals on slavery, and the question, I don't post a lot of memes. I did post one, I think it was today or yesterday. I don't really want to have unity with those people. Now, we need to always look at unity. Statement, fact. A unified front is always better than a divided front. Absolutely correct, right? If you have two people and they're unified in where they want to go to dinner, you're going to go to dinner. Correct, Brian?
Correct.
At the place that they both want to go. If you have one person who doesn't want to go there and you have one person that does, or multiply it out to 50 senators or 48 senators who do, all of a sudden it's much, much harder. So, my thing, and I'm always open. I wish somebody would, anybody out there, please debate me. I love that. Or I don't even mean debate. I mean, I like to be proven wrong. I really do, because I'm not real sure that I'm right on things. And I just think it's great to listen to the other side. We really have never been, in my estimation, we've never been the United States of America. We've been states operating under a dual system of local control and federal control. And, the founding fathers, if you go back and say, they were horrified of the idea of political parties. And guess what? As soon as George Washington stepped down, you had the first political parties. Washington was an unusual character, obviously, for his time, for what he did for the country, not for all the myths that are made up about him. But the idea that and he could have been king, except we didn't want a king, which is probably a good thing. But we've never been united. Well, right. And then there are periods of time when the divide is greater. This is my second period of living through that. First was 68 to 74. That's the assignment I give it, from the end of LBJ through Richard Nixon. And that was a culmination of the 50s and the 60s coming home, right? And now you would look at what we're having now is a culmination of Reagan and the Tea Partiers, so 1980 to now, coming home. And the thing that I always say, but it bears repeating right here, we don't have a political crisis. We have a reality crisis.
Crisis, correct.
And if you have a reality crisis, okay, there's only a couple of things. One side can be right and the other side can be wrong, or both sides can be wrong, but both sides can't be right. And usually it falls. In this case, I would feel safe in saying that the Republicans, the way they're operating right now, are the following. Number one, they are anti-American. And you could just end right there. You don't need to go any further. How can you have a party that is anti-American? Well, the way you have it is they believe a false reality. They believe that America, under their control, would be the America espoused in the ideals laid out and supposed to be. So back to Mr. Manchin. Mr. Manchin, to me, is either a Republican posing as a Democrat, or you mentioned Jeff Van Drew, and for those who don't know, Mr. Van Drew,
because he did finally make this. Van Drew made the split when he realized, with Trump.
Well, and basically, just in case anybody doesn't follow New Jersey politics, Van Drew was a Democrat, and then basically became a Republican, and then switched parties in the House, and actually said, "I pledge my devotion." There were his words, to Donald Trump. Oh, wow, that's a conversion. Now, Manchin hasn't done all that. As I said, I have had an occasion twice to hear him speak, and he certainly doesn't sound as Marcia Taylor Greene, the woman that you're secretly in love with, or who else? Certainly doesn't sound. He doesn't have hair like Matt Gaetz. His hair just repulsed me from day one. But he, is it? And I don't want to hear. I hear people say he's a traitor to the Democratic Party. That here or there. You shouldn't walk in lockstep. But I can't. I really can't. I really have to oppose anyone who sides with the Republicans at this point, if I'm going to be a true American. And there are many ways to side with them and with him and your other love. What's her name from Colorado there? Or Arizona. I'm sorry.
Boebert?
No, the senator. Name escapes me for the moment. Who's Manchin? What's her name? Something to do with, I think, film or I don't know. But anyway, she also is very much like Manchin. Now, the difference is, I think this is interesting, and we'll see how it plays out. Manchin will
cinema.
Cinema. Yeah, cinema. Movies. I knew it was. I can never remember. I think I just blocked.
I know you don't. I drew. I fell off a cliff there too. So that's all right.
No. But what happens is, it's interesting. Again, the Dave Price predictions, I'm mostly wrong. Arizona is moving toward a liberal-leaning Democratic state. So Miss Sinema might be in some trouble. It's going to be a long time, or some things that we can't even see before West Virginia becomes a Republican. So Manchin is, if he believes it, fine. If he's doing it for political reasons, fine for him, bad for the country. I think if I were advising, Miss Sinema, unless she really is a true believer, which I don't know how you could be at this point, in the filibuster and some of the other things that the Senate is working. And, look, what was the number of bills? And I again, 235, I think, bills came from the House last year that McConnell wouldn't even put it on the floor. So the Senate is not working. The Republicans don't have a plan. They simply block things. And Manchin and Sinema are giving, I guess, if you really want to look at it as a war, they're giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
Right. So, Dave, I was thinking, for example, in marketing, there's something called guerrilla marketing. Like
Right.
guerrillas in the Vietnam War, and you just you post something on the telephone pole, and that kind of works. And I was thinking about what was going on with companies like Levi's and I guess it was Delta Airlines, and they're generally, and I think they're doing this because they know that the bulk of the money in this country still comes from the liberal class of people, the working class, and the people who tend to vote Democratic. And we also know what's been going on with Major League Baseball. Perhaps we have to, as progressives, as Democrats, do more things like that. Try to make those connections with corporations where the big money is, and really starve them out.
Look,
if we get the problems with the mansions.
Okay. Now, I don't know. You mentioned Delta. I don't know who the Delta CEO is, but I'm going to bet you a bunch of money that Delta CEO has more common sense than Ted Cruz, even though Ted Cruz has to be bright, right? Has to be bright, because you don't graduate from law schools, that he went to and undergraduate.
Well, he
schools
can play. There's that certain type of brightness you and I talk
No,
about.
I'm not talking about.
I overestimate people because they can pigeonhole some answers.
You have to do that, and
and really, Dave, you know what? Can I just? I'm gonna.
Oh, sure.
Just go on a little bit of a tangent there. You were talking about people like Ted Cruz, okay? So they graduate in the top of the class, or even that guy,
or Josh Hawley. I put those two.
Right. Okay, take those. But you notice they come from the law school. That's something where you say there's a difference between a doctor of physics and then there's a doctor of memorizing bullshit. Okay?
Absolutely.
And that's the bullshit thing.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, I remember that case where this one." So you just memorize. It's like memorizing song
and
lyrics.
some of that, right? But the thing that I would say is, I think that look, sometimes I'll probably speak later. I've been reading a gentleman who I think is one of America's great speakers, and the chapter that I'm on now is dealing with the famous Michael Douglas "Greed is Good" speech. He did
Right.
But greed, it can be good sometimes in this sense. Delta wants to make money, okay? And I don't think they suddenly had, as my daddy used to say in the South, and they still do, no come to Jesus moment about civil rights, about the right to vote. They're realizing that in Georgia, it's going to be a Democratic, if it's not now, if Atlanta keeps expanding within 2 elections, it will be a Democratic state. That's part of it. The country is headed with, again, people who usually go to a more liberal or Democratic, vent, which bodes well for Democrats. And so, what would you coax another one who did it? Do you know how many non-white people drink Coke? And white people drink it too. There's no race, or it's not a liberal drink. It's not a conservative drink. But you'd have a hard time convincing me that these companies are doing it because they somehow now understand the right of the people to vote. What they understand is we better be with more people who will buy our product.
Right, exactly. The 71% of the economy.
Now, what I find interesting, if they can see that, right, and they can see that, how come the Republicans can't? Again, it's
they're
power.
worried about. I think they're worried.
Well, no, they're worried about power. Now, you mentioned something really interesting. I read an article this week, and it was, I think, the writer was spot on, as they say. He said, "You now have put a little wedge between the Republican Party and big business."
Right.
Now, all my life,
and that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. But what you want to do is get in there, and with that wedge, maybe you, meaning liberals, can make a new tie, with business that may benefit both sides, right? Uh, and certainly, I mean, the two things that I think are most interesting about results of the Georgia situation. One is Delta is huge. Okay, I mean, it's huge in Georgia. Coke is bigger. What is it? I think it's Coke. It's either Delta Coke. I think it's Coke Delta Home Depot, right? In terms of the big businesses there, and then the movie industry is and TV. We haven't heard much from them yet. They'll chime
Let's
in
not
later.
forget we haven't discussed this for we talk about MLB, but if the NFL gets involved and then you get the African American athletes,
we're
that's
getting
the
whole
real
thing.
thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Okay, and so what happens, or what I thought the two most interesting responses that I really don't get unless unless the Republican brain trust, such as it is, said, we're doing suicidal missions. Otherwise, we can't hold it. Georgia legislature, which we know is basically batshit crazy collectively, right. They're going to take away Delta's tax breaks, which they've threatened to do because of their involvement. Now, two things happen then. Do you really think Delta cares where it's based?
No,
they like it.
Hub.
They like Atlanta because what they've been able to do, my understanding of this, and again, somebody may know better than I, they were really looking at Birmingham a lot in Alabama. They wanted something southern to control Latin America, South America, the flight south, right? I still can't believe this, but statistics constantly come out that Atlanta is the busiest airport in the world. Now, I lived in Atlanta for 14. It is huge, but man, when I think of Heathrow, and you think, of course, the other thing is it's where's the next airport, right? Miami, right? That's really that large. So it does have the whole South. Whereas you've got LaGuardia, you've got Newark there. Here we've got Dulles. We've got three airports here in Washington.
Chicago, O'Hare.
Chicago has the two. So yeah, I mean that may well be, but they do that. Now the other thing that happens with that is any pretense of any kind of it benefits others to have Delta here is gone now because it says we want to control Delta. You don't want to do what we want to do? We'll take that away. Now McConnell, I thought his comments were interesting. Whether he spoke before he thought, which I don't really think he does much. It basically condensed down. He said, business should stay out of politics unless it's to give money to support. Oh, no, I said to support. Come on. That's absurd. I mean, what do you mean? If you spend money, you're going to be involved in it, right? The NRA just didn't give money so that, they could. The NRA gave money, a legal bribe, if you will. For gun control, they were very, very effective.
He wasn't careful about that, but it won't even matter. Like you say, they don't. You've said this before. They just don't care.
Well, no, they don't. But there comes a point, though. There's two kinds of don't care, right? There's one, I don't care, but the Republicans don't strike me as the kind of people that'll throw themselves on grenades. Donald Trump's immortal words: "You go up there, and I'll be right there with you." Oh, I meant I'd be in the bunker complaining about the way you're dressed.
While I'm eating hors d'oeuvres, right?
And watching.
I need some more Pig in the Blankets here,
And watching Kimberly Guilfoyle bounce her tits up and down while she's
what was her
dancing. She's just weird. Now, so what we're finding, Brian, and that's why I'm glad, and I hope we get some people tonight who share their insights, because I don't know that anyone quite understands what's going on here. This is one of those times that comes along every so often when a whole bunch of things happen and the country may or may not go through a very substantive change. All right. Sometimes those changes are cultural. If you look at the 1960s, that was a cultural watershed, not so much a political one, right? Drugs, sex, women's equality, such as it is, right? This one, though, may be political, which, could turn out to be very interesting and I think very beneficial. I don't see any reason, there was never a lot of people, and again, I understand this, they seem to think, I bet you if you ask people, they seem to think, well, there was always two parties.
Right.
Well, that wasn't preordained. As I said, the way the parties came about was Hamilton and Adams kind of favored a heavy federal government. Alexander Hamilton, I just finished a book, it's interesting, said without his sexual escapade, his big one, he would have been president. That may well be. And then you had Jefferson and Monroe and Madison, Southerners, Virginians, states' rights people. It broke down into Hamilton and Adams supporting Britain, which is kind of weird when you fought to get away from him. Jefferson, of course, and the others being Francophiles. But there's nothing that says the Republican Party hasn't been here forever. So there's nothing to say that it can't die. And a pretty sure way to die, I think, is to follow Donald Trump.
Right.
And that's where they are. They're Trump's party. There's nobody else running the ship. It sounds, I don't know, it sounds cliche-ish. It's interesting. Just look, Bri, at the list of people who have gone to Mar-a-Lago to kiss his ring and probably the other side of his body too.
Right.
Every Republican, just about, with the exception, I don't think McConnell's been down there and there are a couple others, but for better or worse, they're siding with Trump, the people he brought into the party. And here's the thing, the way I look at it. Cities are solidly Democratic. They're not going anywhere. Rural America is pretty solidly Republican, but there are more people in the cities. So where do the votes come from that decide elections? From the suburbs. That's where they come from. Okay. It really is interesting to look at it. And, there may be a point now we're seeing, remember when they talked about Reagan Democrats, when Democrats kind of moved toward Reagan? We may be seeing the suburbs Biden Republicans, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly, I don't see how you buy that Biden's a socialist or any of that. No, they don't even know what those words mean. But so it'll be, interesting 4 years. The other thing, before I forget it, because I'm getting old, I thought it was interesting. Biden, he never said when he was running, so I think some people assumed he was going to be a one-term president. Have you seen now? If things work out, Lord willing, the creek don't rise.
No,
he's already open.
I'm not that confident that he's going.
No. I'm saying. Well, I didn't say that. I'm saying he's opened up the door.
Right. He's opened the right. He's
there could be now that can be good and bad.
And that's why I think they really. Senator Vice President Harris has to really, in her mind, prepare just in anyway. It's just like, for example, it's like the relief pitcher or the goalie who has to.
No.
You have to be ready.
And unfortunately, there probably really isn't, Brian, in politics, a less important position than vice president.
It is important.
Until it becomes the most important position in government. Right. I guess it's a bad analogy, but you kind of said that with the relief pitcher. That's a good one. Or one of the things, firemen, very stressful job, one of the highest heart attack rates of any occupation. And the reason you sit around, the bell rings and you're in danger. You know what I mean? And
get your ass up.
There's nothing. You can train.
Under those
you can train and you can do that. So, but certainly from what we're seeing, Kamala's not been iced out, of anything. She's there in the decision making. And again, anybody, if you look, Biden's had a pretty open dialogue. Forget about with the Republicans. He hasn't iced out Bernie. AOC has his ear. I think Nancy Pelosi and AOC have kind of a mutual, admiration for strong women. So you've got a lot of diverse opinions, which is very good.
Dave, you were mentioning about this past about change and maybe the possibility of change. And oddly enough, I was watching something by you probably never heard of this guy, Frank Zane. He used to be one of these muscle builders, but he was like he's still alive. He was actually a teacher. He was a chemistry teacher in high school in Pennsylvania, and he didn't take it. I don't want to say he didn't take it as seriously as guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger and all, but long story short, he was a guy who was, he never was as big as these guys. He was always very technical in his head. And, he said, I usually disagree with a lot of people about diet and all this kind of stuff, and he got into this philosophical conversation about Buddhism with, and I'm going to get to the finish line here.
Right.
He called the bardo, where in Buddhism, it's the idea that after you die, there's 49 days in between your death and then your choice of whether you're going to go into something new. And it's funny when he said that, my mind, for some strange reason, because I'm an atheist, but I started thinking politically, and I thought, could we have some type of political bardo out there where, again, you have the situation, you see what's going on with the corporations, you see what's going on with Joe Manchin. Well, isn't this an opportunity that perhaps that we can make the change, just like the Republicans did? Perhaps.
Well,
there's
yes.
something that we can do.
The only problem, and it's going to be interesting. I knew I was going to get this book in. Gosh darn it! I urge everyone to read. To me, he's one of the America's best thinker writers. I mean, there's better thinkers, there's better writers. It's Kurt Anderson. His previous book was Fantasyland: How America Went Haywire. And the premise of that book is we got kind of fake news and cult of personality, and that's been with us for 300 years, right? This kind of Trumpiness came on, and his new one is Evil Geniuses, and it is really, I haven't been able to argue with much point yet. Do you realize this Republican operation was at least 40 years in the making with Reagan, and some basically take it back to Goldwater, although he got trounced. So somewhere between 1964, but I like the 1980, for 40 years. And as you read this book, every name, Scalia, the Supreme Court, right, the politicians that are there, not the new wave, but they're come up, and they've been planning this. And interesting enough, and I agree with this, I think a lot of people disagree with it. Anderson and some others have cited what happened was in the 60s, it was kind of do your own thing, right? But it was for good. Reject the man, reject authority. Well, the Republicans have used that same idea, but kind of turned it against people, like I've said before, and it's just fascinating to me. This is the first time, to my knowledge, in 69 years on the planet, when I'm fighting alongside the current government. That's never happened before.
Right. You're very anti-establishment.
But with Obama, I didn't have to. That kind of was that peaceful period. But now, so this idea of this, so I think we are on something, but it'll be interesting. Can something, when the opportunity presents itself with very little preparation, right, overtake a 40-year planned out takeover of American government? And that's exactly what it was, not a coup, but the idea of republicanism taking over. And if you go back, and I started looking at that, I said, yeah, wow, where, you had the New Deal, right? And then you had, LBJ, and you had also, and then voila, and of course that we run straight into some of Donald Trump's playbook, which was invented by Richard Nixon, Southern strategy, crime, etc. But you notice this time too, crime didn't play real well for Donald Trump. While it's pretty hard to support every law and order when you see a 9.5-minute murder on television, a policeman to a black man. It's just hard to say that all authority is good, all policemen are good. They're not. And so, it may be, we won't know. I don't think we're going to know tomorrow or whatever, but I think we will have a little bit better idea. What would it be? Twice, I think only twice in the modern age has the majority party with the president held, the Congress. A lot depends on who runs and where they run and whatever. But it was really interesting. And you've brought this up before too, Brian. I think a lot of people miss this point. They not only had a strategy at the federal government, they had a strategy from city council all the way to state
Right,
governments, all the way through.
and this is why
And that's
you
what
might see this lack of change. I mean, excuse me. This is why we can't hold Congress, because they've got these institutions at the state level and the local level. They've got them captured.
and we'll get back to your,
They don't play a
Manchin,
fair game.
well, no. The question becomes, I don't think fairness enters into their equation.
Right.
It doesn't. I mean, when you talk about power,
Well, I
do
mean,
you
really,
really?
is it, Dave? Is it any different than somebody who's really wealthy trying to cheat on their taxes? And I mean, this is what they do. I mean, it's really the Republican Party is a metaphor for the individual who wants to get over, the one who has legacy wealth, the one that wants to just have it easy. He's essentially won the lottery already when he inherits. Or I'm just
Right.
saying he, but this is what they
She,
do.
he, whomever.
Right, but
Well,
this is what they do. They cheat.
I think one of the inherent differences between conservatives and liberals, and there are many, is a conservative is pretty much a person either concerned with himself or herself or his or her group from the exclusion of others, right? Advancement. That's white supremacy. That's what you just pointed out with unfettered capitalism. And I think for the most part, liberals, Democrats look maybe more. It's the ancient. America's never resolved this. I don't know we ever will. Yes, individuals have freedom, but so do groups. And where does an individual freedom stop when it impinges on the freedom of another group? Or is the First Amendment, is the Second Amendment more powerful than the first words of the Constitution? Americans have to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I would say right now, and the pursuit of happiness, you can't really debate that, but certainly right now, Republican policies are threatening lives, and Republican policies are definitely threatening liberty. Who's this? Gary
Yes,
Peacock.
yes. So Gary says, "What the fuck? What was the no-show all about? Who the fuck's in charge?" Well, actually, I'm in charge with that, and I had last week's thing, and I didn't update it, so my fault.
Well, actually, Gary, I'll speak to that.
Yes, this is a replay. You're seeing this. This is a week ago.
No, Gary, what this is actually our statistics have gone so high now that we want to keep people away tonight because we just can't have when you get to your seventh or eighth listener, you move into a new tax bracket. So we didn't want to do that.
We actually have some people are laughing, but
They should be.
Facebook user, which I think might be Gary Peacock, says you have no viewers tonight. We actually have 10 right now. If this, they're all on YouTube, and that might be the case in the future, folks, because I'm probably going to get rid of Restream and just go on YouTube and then just share the shit out of the YouTube stuff. So,
Well, you know what's happening, Brian,
and Dave and I aren't really worried about the viewership. Believe me, if we were, we would be worried about.
Yeah,
it.
that's right, Evil.
Do we look worried?
I can't. Hey, Oda, my boy, Evil Yoda. I'm not smart enough to use regular psychology, let alone reverse psychology. But back to the point. Well, this show, we never know where we're going to go, obviously. But let's just talk a minute about that. You brought it up. Currently using Restream, you can.
Okay, now hold
What?
on. So Gary,
breaking news.
hold on. We got to put the sounder on.
Hold on. Here comes Gary.
So apparently Gary's upset and he's leaving.
Well,
Okay.
Gary, that's okay, man. Last I knew, Donald Trump didn't win the election, and this is still America. So you may go and come as you please. The point is interesting, though, Brian. What again? I'm going more into the podcasting realm soon. If anybody's interested in my life, they shouldn't be. But I've renewed my contract after a year of pandemic with the Smithsonian, so I'll be doing a lot more with them.
And you have
But
renewed with Divided We Stand, and I sent you your penny last week. So
I didn't get my penny, but I don't do this.
Yeah.
No, but so I've been reading about what they are saying now is to pick one platform, and YouTube, you're right, because of clarity, thing seems to be it, and then to reshare on Facebook, right? I mean, in other words, you post it
Right.
there.
I mean, I'm not gonna keep spending, $15 a month for Restream. I mean, a lot of people like it to say that you're on 8 different platforms at once, but I'm not gonna
No,
get nickel and dime for this crap.
well, no. I mean, but what I'm saying is that's kind of the not that you would jump on a trend, but you jump on a trend when it's beneficial. And YouTube has been and is the best video out there. You could say Vimeo, is
It's
a
higher
competitor, but not
quality, yes. Vimeo's higher
but,
quality, but not many people go
Vimeo,
there. Right.
but not numbers wise, right? It's
Right.
like saying,
Twitch eventually, but it's still
well,
YouTube's game.
that's going to be interesting. Will Twitter come through? We don't know that. And again, last little bit that I understand about social media, we all have our favorites and they all have a use. So it depends. Certainly, if this program were geared for younger people, we wouldn't be anywhere near Facebook. We'd be on
Right.
TikTok.
Right.
We'd be on other things. So it's now we make mistakes. I didn't realize you'd done that. I'll send Gary, if it'll make you feel better, I'll send Brian a nasty note from.
Well, see, quite frankly, for example, because I do
don't.
go to different platforms, I'm using Restream, but it's not something that I go to. I use Ecamm, and that's that. But there's this thing on Restream where they get involved, and you can update titles, and I don't even think about it. So when I go live, it automatically shoots out whatever title I previously used, and it was last week's show.
Gotcha.
That. I really don't care because it does send people for a loop because it says no show tonight. Yeah, look, I understand that, but I think once we go on, if you have subscribed to YouTube, you get notifications. Just click the bell. That's what it's for, and you should be okay. And I share it to Facebook, so it's really not a big deal. I mean, look, we have anywhere between 10 to 30 viewers. That's all we get. We may get some later in the week, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, look, if Dave and I, were getting 10,000 views a week, then Restream would really mean something. And I thought at the time that it did, but
Well,
really
Brian,
doesn't.
that's another thing. I mean, you're a few years ahead of me on this game, but as I start studying it, it's so like all technology, it changes, and what works today doesn't work tomorrow, and so it really is kind of looking at what now. Mantra, I like YouTube. Mantra says that's mostly what I watch, and the other thing, Brian, I think is true. If in any show, whether it's ours or I don't even know who has the highest viewership now. It's not the Kardashians anymore. I don't say. So let's say somebody in the news business. I assume that Rachel Maddow, probably has as high.
Are you
not
talking
as
about
high.
on television or are you talking about YouTube?
No, I'm talking about it anything, right? I'm just saying, if Rachel Maddow was on Facebook and moved to YouTube, her fans or her people would move to YouTube. They'd migrate.
Yeah,
not all of them, but most of them. And I'll tell you what. Again, now we're going to tie it back into politics. It's going to be interesting because if there is something that Democrats and Republicans could agree on, they won't agree on the penalties. Is that there's a danger with social media. There's both a danger that we've seen in the election, but there's even more a danger to them, right? Again, big corporations today, beautiful day, I'm walking, and I happen to see this little kid shooting basketball. And so I stop, and his dad was there. His dad, it turns out to be a 46-year-old attorney who looked, I swear to God, he looked 38. He's in great shape. And we got to talking and different things. And he was looking at it more from the corporation standpoint, what the pandemic has done to change. Will people go back to work? Will we work from home? Now, think about that. That's just another change on top of this. Political change, social change, all coming together. So we may be in one of those change periods. We'll keep you apprised out there. Our 6 viewers, or I guess we had 10 and
Dave,
down.
Evil Yoda makes a good point, and we didn't do that for this particular reason, but about 2 months ago we went after, I forget the channel. It used to be Chris's channel, the Natural Progressive, but we went after the Mind or the Dive. The Dive. We went after the Dive because we had a problem with what was on the Dive. It wasn't,
and I think they're good. Now I don't know. I'll tell you who I think does an excellent job of. I I don't watch a lot of YouTube. That's just me. But because I'm still a print journalist at heart, so I just read everything I can get my hands on. Certainly on my Kindle, on my computer, on my phone. So I'm not technophobe that way. But a group that I think does a really good job of doing that line back and forth between news and being provocative and being funny. I like the Young Turks. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
Yeah, they've had a little problem of late. I watched them
Overall, and you see a lot of it really, and I think that is what bothers me, the cult of personality. That's why I don't want to be old fashioned, but I think there was something to be said for print journalism when I was there in the 70s and 80s. We were fairly anonymous fellows, right? Now it's all about having a following, and the problem with followings, you start believing the hype others put on you, and I think it's just fun. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, what Brian and I do is no different.
No, I've seen
just a little bit longer than what we would do when we're together.
Saying Cam Moore, I mean, like one of my favorite channels, and Dave knows I watch In Mendham stuff. We don't talk about it much here, even on the phone anymore. But
right,
Gary in Mendham would attack like the modern mystic and these people that most of you aren't too familiar with. But it was very, very interesting. He would attack the amazing atheists and go back and forth. And so I think there's something to that. But that was the way that In Mendham worked. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think he was, he wasn't doing the show to have an attack on somebody and to get a lot of views because he would block users. I mean, In Mendham's probably one of the few people who legitimately does it legit. He either just gets rid of them. He doesn't have to have 10,000 subscribers. He only has more, but he's not looking for that kind of thing. So he legitimately attacks the idea of somebody. It looks like he's attacking ad hominem, but in reality, I think most of it's the text. So we aren't really that tight. We just had a problem with what the guy was doing that particular show when he started talking about when you start giving Rudy Giuliani props and say there's a lot of truth to what he's saying, then Dave and I have a problem with that, and that's why we did that.
Yeah, and I think too, I would love to replace you with Sean Hannity. The reason would be I could argue, scream, and we'd have bigger viewership, right? I mean, and you might want to replace me with, Bill O'Reilly's a non-player now, but Tucker. You want to have Tucker.
By the way, I won't put another, but Dave is suggesting that you do a commercial where, Dave, you wiggle your ass.
Can I say something about that? Is that...
to show how clean it is.
Well, I'm not so sure my ass is so clean all the time, so I don't know that I want to expose that. I got my mom watching.
And by the way, this is
Lord.
The guests have degraded the show, not us this time. Okay, that's your fault, Gary.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Okay, where were we? We got to get on here. Here we go. Let's get on something more interesting. It sells. It has sold since the beginning of time. And let's get a little bit of sex and Matt Gaetz up on the board.
Yes, let's talk about Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz is a real pain in the ass. You and I have never liked the guy, and whether it's Nunes or Gomart or Jim Jordan, it doesn't really matter. They're all bad. But this guy, if anybody really deserved to have this happen, it's Matt Gaetz, and he looks like he's in as Uncle Jeb would say, he's in a heap of trouble. You know what I mean? And it looks like he's running, but I really think he will make some type of deal, because I think they've, when would the New York Times, constantly put this out, they've got to have goods on him.
Oh, no, you mean Matt Gaetz will make a deal?
Yes.
I'm going to disagree with you.
He will try to get at.
I'll tell you why. Greenberg, the guy who's got the goods on him, will make all kinds of deals. Now, unless
Gaetz wants to do in somebody bigger. See, that's the thing.
And the question becomes, it appears that this is fairly confined at this point to Florida politicians, and Gaetz happening to be a Florida politician who found himself in the House. Now, there's a writer down here again. I like to shout out writers that I really, really, really do like. She's a columnist, Alexandra Petri, like Petri dish, from the Washington Post, and she is it's hard to be, 100% funny. She's basically a humorous column writing about politics, and that's difficult. I mean, it really is. That she had a point this week, and she went serious. And you know how, Brian, if somebody jokes all the time and they go serious, it's like, wow, right? And she said, Matt Gaetz isn't the problem. She said, I've seen Matt Gaetz's all my life. She says, what's the problem is everybody who she showed those pictures to, who didn't say anything about it,
Right.
they gave Matt Gaetz, or they do believe that's okay. Now, look, I love naked pictures of women as much as anyone. You want to be embarrassed. The other night, you watch a little porn from here to there, and I'm watching it, and Jesus hit me in the head. I said, "What are you hitting me in the head for?"
Jesus hitting you in the head.
Judy, my wife.
Oh, I thought you said
She
Jesus
said,
hit you in the head.
She said, "What the
Stop
hell is
watching
wrong
that,
with you?"
Dave.
No, she said, "What the hell's wrong?" I said, "Wow, why?" She says, "You fell asleep watching porn. How does anyone fall asleep? What?" And I did. I fell asleep. She picks it up, and she goes, "Oh my God!" So I let he without sin cast the first stone, but you have to draw lines. And while I think Matt Gaetz has horrible hair, just something. There's just something that reminds me of a devil-possessed preacher about him the first time I ever saw him. I don't think he's necessarily a bad-looking guy. He comes from money, and where do you go? Because it's not about sex. When you start going with 17-year-olds or even 18-year-olds at that point, and where the hell does that go? But back to Alexandria and the Congress. That just shows how toxic the masculinity system is. And I think if you ask most men over the age of 40, they've encountered those situations where, they should have spoken out. Maybe even they know they should have spoken out, and they don't. I know I have. As I get older, I stop that. But, initially you kind of want to fit in. Well, if that's the way how you fit in Congress is showing pictures of the women, and do those women know those pictures were taken? Do they
what's
know
the whole thing with the picture thing? Like, you would think if this guy is that interested, he would just be interested in having sex instead of showing pictures, like the real thing.
Au contraire, my friend. Just like rape is not a crime of passion or sex, it's a crime of power. This is having power. I can get these women, look at this. They'll do these things. And here we go. I'm all this. Now, the other thing, and I'm gonna back Alexandria and what she said. I'm taking a step further. If you believe what is said, that two of the most disliked people, the most disliked senator is Ted Cruz, and the most disliked congressman is Matt Gaetz. Well, what the hell are they still doing there then? Right?
Right.
Okay. Guess what? They are, you're now tarred and feathered with them if you're part of their party, if you didn't speak up. And this brings me back to my thing about suburbs and who rules the suburbs. Women. It's the one place probably, certainly in rural America, they don't, right? Maybe not in the cities, although they're coming up, but certainly in the suburbs. And so the Republican Party, it's almost, which I'm gleeful to watch. It's almost like they're on a suicidal mission, thinking somehow they can win, and I just don't see that with Matt. That's some big time. Now, who hasn't defended him? How about everybody hasn't defended him? Trump lukewarm, nobody else coming out for him. If you listen to reporters down here, they can't tell you because it's not on the record. Said nobody, is saying anything good about him. Nobody's coming to his. Well, yeah, Animal Kingdom. There's some interesting.
Well, I never liked that show, Animal Kingdom.
What, Animal Kingdom?
Because it was horrific when you're 5 years old and you see Mutual of Omaha. You knew it was going to happen near the end. The tiger's going to just rip apart something. The gazelle, Jesus. And you just can't watch that shit. That's worse, a lot worse than anything that happened with pornography.
Well, I'm not going to say that.
The worst thing that can happen in pornography is you get hit in the head with a pillow. But this thing is
But
this is
isn't it?
bad.
But isn't it interesting that if somebody says, "I have 52 guns," okay, but if somebody says, as I just did, I fell asleep watching porn. Uh, yeah, the only person should really have any kind of say in that is my wife, who just laughed at me after she beat on me. Uh, how in America did we find out, or how in America did we come with the idea that sex is worse than guns?
Right.
Where did that come from? I mean, well, it came from our fake Puritan ancestry, who,
Yeah, they don't want you to have fun. They just
well,
they want to control all of that.
well, and that becomes very interesting too. Okay, here's a challenge. We got to get we have such great viewers out there. Seriously, guys and ladies, go to your phones, go to your thing, find me the last congressman or senator embroiled in a big sex scandal who was a Democrat. I mean, there's been many, but recently. Now, you could go with the California uh, woman, right? The bisexual had an affair with her
Well,
aide.
they also tried to bring
And
it up with Kamala Harris. With
well, no, that's
had
not it. But I'm just saying the others would be. I'm talking about real. It always just strikes me as kind of fascinating that those or find the last time you have all these right wingers. Oh, homosexuality is bad, and they're usually the ones found with the 10-year-old boys, right?
Right.
At least Matt didn't. Matt. Again, now think about that, Brian. Matt Gaetz comes from some money. I mean, his family are millionaires. He was a rising star in a dying party, but still a rising star. And as my friend, the photographer that I worked with for years, Craig Terry, said, a few minutes of friction.
Dave,
and his political
Anthony's
crazy.
saying we should take calls. Why don't you get your call machine out and
Well,
start
you know what?
sending-
I looked into that, Brian. I do have a Roadcaster now, but I would have to. So if you go to YouTube, we can do that because I'm not going to use Restream. Then we could get phone calls in.
Oh,
But
really?
because what's happening is
Can you take them from your end? Like I do the Ecamm thing.
if I'm doing the show like you're doing the show now, right? You can run your Roadcaster and Ecamm at the same time. So yes, you can get direct phone calls in that way. So if we go to that now, I'm not gonna use.
I could
Restream.
certainly just have somebody call my number and I go like that. That's
well,
really a cheap way of doing it.
Well, part of my fight with the Smithsonian is they're still in the early 19th century here, but that's what they do, and it's like translating it. Now, I like the call in directly. Now, it can get a little weird, but you know what? There's always a, thank you for calling, boom button, right? So, maybe we will be doing that. I'd love to hear, think about that. A number of the people out here probably know, they know how we sound. I know how Gary sounds because we've been friends since just one day short of forever. But, I don't know how their voice, right? So it would be interesting. I'm sure you've had that happen, Brian, to you sometime in life. You've talked to somebody on the phone, and then you see them, it didn't look anything like you imagined, right?
Right, and sometimes I talk on the phone. I mean, it's rarely happened, but I get in a conversation with somebody and you realize it's the wrong number, but you think because they have the same first name, those kind of things.
Oh yeah. So let's see what we got here. Should I have more replies? Yeah. Well, I wonder, and I'll respond to this. And remember, I have what do I have? 3 classes in psychology at college level or something like that. So I'm not really well trained. But there seems to be.
If you're an artist or a writer, you should. It doesn't really matter.
Well, yeah.
Dostoevsky knew just as much about psychology.
No.
As anybody.
I understand, but it does seem often, not all the time, but often, the cliche "methinks thou doth protest too much," does hold true, and I think there's a danger, especially for politicians, when you start preaching morality or start making morality part of your platform. You better damn well. At least prior to Trump, and I don't know things have changed that much. You better you better pretty much follow some along those lines. Although, again, look at I'm not going to say the Catholic Church. That's a whole different world. I will say this: I think not having any kind of sexual relations, subliminating it to a higher power, probably not the best
Well,
idea
this,
ever.
come on, Dave, real quick. I want to address this because you don't hear much about
Yeah,
them.
well, evil.
You said
No,
Democrats aren't, they don't have sexual issues. You just don't. I'm sure they're individuals.
well, like I said, I wish I could.
Don't get better. This whole crap of the point. Just do it if you're interested. That's what you're supposed to do, isn't it?
Well, the other thing is, a lot of times, again, look at Al Franken. He was a victim of the Me Too. Now, he did something that may not fall under those values. A lot of times the Democrats, for whatever reason, maybe because they are a little bit better people, okay, I'll step aside. Look at the number of preachers.
Right, they all have some kind of hang up. You know what I mean? Like they can't.
There you are, Trev. That's a great one. I think, or the only thing I don't like about that, Trev, I agree, but sometimes you have to judge people. So I changed it a little bit. If you judge, make sure you're better than the people you're judging.
Right.
That, to me, that's, but I agree. And look, I've had this discussion when I could still discuss with people, and I believe it's true. I said, do you really think if Donald Trump hadn't won in 2016, that I would have spent now 5 years of my life battling against him and doing this stuff? Had it been Jeb Bush, we'd have had arguments. I don't think we would do that. Anthony Weiner, correct? There are some, but no. And I think that's the point.
And he's a guy. Can we just go in for Anthony?
Who?
That whole thing with Weiner,
well,
that was he just was just awful. He's another one. Just he must have had some type of hang up. Get your shit together. Most normal people, you have your thing going on this, your thing going on, and you don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to have these secret pictures, and what is that all about?
Okay, you know what that's about, Brian? Quite simply, that's about never growing past what I call, and of course they said the same thing with Trump, the locker room mentality, right? Good old boys. We're gonna swap stories about what we did, what we didn't do, who we did it to, and never stopping to think. And I'm sure you've met people like that. Later say, oh my God, now I've got a daughter. Not that they were thinking about themselves, but people are going to talk about her like that. And it really is different. I've never had a daughter. With a son, I think it is a little bit different for a male. But now I have a granddaughter, and I'm going like, oh yeah, wow, So it makes a little bit of a difference where you are in the world. How many homosexual out have we seen in Republican politics? Not too many. Again, Democrats come. Barney Frank certainly, was very open.
Well, the Republicans don't come out, though. That's the thing,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Graham is probably gay,
Well, just because, look, see, I find that highly offensive. Just because there are pictures of him cavorting with Cabana type boys doesn't mean that he's gay. Come on, what would be interesting? That would be very fascinating. Okay, suppose someone of that stature, Donald Trump, if they came out doing what Matt Gaetz is accused of doing, let's be fair, he's accused of doing something guilty, and it were boys and you were Republican, would that have a difference? And I think it very well would. I really do. It's again, they wanted to be, but let's run that down. Somebody was telling me this. Okay, growing up, here's what the Republican Party meant to me. And Brian, anybody else can jump in. Okay, number one, they were anti-communist, which meant they were anti-Russian. That was number one. Number two, they were the party that spoke of family values and morality, right? Number three, they were the party of big business. Number four, they were the party of, expanded military. Donald Trump, is none of those things, right? And now they're the party of Donald Trump. So how, is it, can you even talk about it being a Republican Party? Is it really, or is it, the joke, the Trumpublicans, or what is it now? And whatever it is, I wouldn't take a wager on their survival. Not in the long run. I wouldn't. If, there's just too many things moving now. When you start getting, Brian, um, feedback from the public of 75 and 80% of the people approving certain items, right? And you're opposing them. You can only win so long on that. And that's where they are right now. Almost every issue. Okay, not one Republican, correct, voted for the recovery.
Correct.
Correct.
And not one Republican's going to vote for the infrastructure bill.
Well, let's look at the recovery. It wasn't Pew, but it was somebody broke it out into like the 16 categories that were kind of funded in that. The lowest support was 51%, and the highest was 80. That means all 16 provisions were supported by the majority of Americans. Now you can eliminate, in those in the 50s. But you can't run that.
Right, but see, I think the reason why they did that is because they're obstructionists, number one. We know that. But any Republican who voted on the other side would have been abetting the enemy. And see, and that's what the Republicans...
And that's where we are. And that's
they
why,
want them to do that. And that's where the people are guilty
and
too.
notice, I used that term tonight, somewhat in jest, and I got to remember I don't want to do that, because Joe Manchin and your other secret lover there, Cinema.
Yeah, you're giving me a lot of lovers here. I'm gonna be in trouble here.
You got both of them. You got Green. You also got.
No, I think you've listed like 6 or 7. I'd be pretty
over the years, over the years. But no, they have a right to vote however they want. I mean, but the question becomes, why? Why are you voting that way?
Right.
Well, with the difference is the Republicans are voting in a block. Does it make it?
It's all obstructionism.
But with I look more to Cinema, Weinstein, and Manchin. I want to hear why they're doing it, and I don't want to hear certain things like for the dignity in the Senate, or someday we might.
The press really has to go after men. You say, put him on the spot. And say, well, how about your African American? How about your poor voters in West Virginia?
Well,
Clyburn's got to do it publicly.
Okay. Let's go on something else. I just want to address. It is tangentially political. Would you explain to me, Brian Weinstein, or anybody out there, how a warehouse for Amazon in Alabama can vote against unionization? How is their life going to be worse having a union when Bezos is the single most powerful economic person in the world?
Well, I know that some people are getting bought off. It's just like
I'm not going to go. I don't know. I'm being
that's
serious.
what I can think.
Now here's
they only need to get a certain amount to be able to tip it over.
And here's why stupidity. You've said this ever since I've known you. Stupidity and ignorance is deadly. One of the rationales that the union people, pro-union people, are going to do is Amazon got a mailbox, just a regular mailbox, right? A big, one of the big mailbox put outside the warehouse, and the union people are making the idea that then people thought that Amazon would know how they're voting. I mean, it's just like, that doesn't happen. I mean, I just don't get how continually people vote or select or do things that aren't in their best interests, and ignore the fact that they're providing the people who least care about them more security, more money. I don't get it. I mean,
that's why I say it. This is why I say, when you have, anytime you have an ignorant person whether you give them money or they have no money, they're going to cause problems for you and for me eventually. I mean, it's like having stupid people in your family. Like I have a cousin stupid. I say that cousin's going to cause problems for me down the line. I know it because that person's stupid, and everybody's got that.
It's funny. I went back
it's like they're like bombs ready to go off.
Well,
but it's a question of when is the bomb going to go off?
I'm not saying this about me. I think I'm typical. So I've gone through so many, what should I say? Emotional ideas about Trump and anti-Trumpers. I mean, everything from pity to hate to whatever. This weekend, came back to the area for and spent most of my day Sunday with a Trumper, and spent most of my day Monday with a Trumper, a family, right? And I decided I'm not going to argue with them. I just wanted to listen to them. Now, the one is apolitical. He just votes for Trump, and that's the end of it. You know what I mean? He doesn't say anything. So that's fine. The other one was quite vocal. And I got him talking, and I just wanted to hear what he said. And like, I tried not to let my jaw drop simply because nothing made sense, right, in what he was saying. Or it was short-sighted. Let me give you one that I don't get. You could make an argument, if you were in a certain category of person, that the economy was doing very well under Donald Trump. That's true. Okay, it was.
But the pandemic, if you were investing in stocks,
I said if you're in,
you weren't really producing anything. There wasn't.
Brian, you're playing. They don't. I'm saying you could make that argument, right? If you didn't care about anybody but yourself,
right?
You would. Well, but it didn't end up that way necessarily, because the pandemic did come along. You can't cherry pick events, right?
Right.
To say I was doing real well with my business until Trump didn't do anything about the pandemic. So it's the pandemic. No, it's, you're president of all of it, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. The damn wall not only is ridiculous and unnecessary, it doesn't even work. It falls down in a strong wind. That's not a joke. That was, go down and look at it, you dumbass people, and then come back and tell me, right? Or we're being overrun by immigrants. Okay. Well, let's look at the problem, shall we? Part of that problem is coming from Honduras. Now, there are not Mexicans coming across the border a lot now. There are Latin Americans, right? Central Americans coming across. Well, if I remember my history correctly, we were involved in about every coup down there in America.
Right.
And, again, I come back to this a lot, Mr. Malcolm X. I think, again, given his circumstance of his birth and coming through what he came through, and then was one of the great American thinkers at this point. And again, he was arriving at a different conclusion after he went to Mecca in terms of the white devil. But even there, and he said at the time of John F. Kennedy's death, and I mean, was pilloried for it, chickens coming home to roost. Now maybe in Latin America, one of these chickens are coming home to roost, right? As young people flee. Would you look, right? If you had a child in Mexican cartel country or Venezuela, you would do anything to get that child away from that. So of course, so is there a way we can't have them walk across the border?
Joey Folgers made a joke out of my college days where I got fined for
drawing
on the walls. He says I can draw on the wall now. That's a good joke, Joe. I'll give you credit for that one.
That's true. But the idea is, and I think Republicans, they see everything, and I don't mean this in terms of black and white racially. They don't see any shades of gray, right? And there's always shades of gray. You've got to look at that. So,
and then something like 50 of them.
Now that's a very bad joke.
Joe's is better than mine.
just because you read porn and use it and have Russian contacts who are involved in the business. No. Yeah, there are 50 Shades of Grey, and you don't even have to be talking about the worst written book in America, or one, not the worst, but one of the worst.
I only know the title, honestly. I only know the title.
No, Sex Sells. You never read it? I mean, I picked it up and read
it.
Not the whole thing. Just looked at it and said, oh my God.
Unless it's for real, I'm not involved in it. Okay.
It wasn't even good porn. My God. Porn for amateurs, I guess.
Right.
Back to Matt Gaetz.
Let's get back to him.
Okay. Would you? Who just put that back about? I want to see who said that foolishness. Edward Abbey was a pretty smart person out there in the desert,
Big
right? You saw.
was Guy McPherson loved Edward Abbey.
Oh no, I mean, he's you look at, I mean, who are the originals? You got you've had environmentalists all along. But Edward was one of the first. This idea of Matt Gaetz, though, uh, this idea of power and masculinity and growth. I don't know, man. I mean, it, if you don't say something bad about him, and it's not enough just for the Republicans not to support him, right? Shouldn't they say, not yet? He has not been, convicted of anything, but I certainly do hope, just for the sake of every woman whose picture he showed who didn't have permission. Now, maybe they all did. Today there was, I don't even know who these people are, another celebrity, another sex tape emerged, and it was an Instagram model, whatever the hell that is now, who actually had college. And I mean, she was designed to be enhanced, and she's fine with the sex tape. Well, that's different. She was aware of it. She'll get her play. He'll get his play. It's either something, I think, I don't know, something in music or something like that. But I don't think. Well, I may be wrong, but I don't think all those women, even if they knew the pictures were taken, I don't think. Again, I don't think they really had in their wildest imagination that they would be shown on the floor of the House of Representatives. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Brian, you're looking down. What are you doing down?
No, I'm
here?
trying to. I can see where people are getting this no show tonight. It shows up as that, and I did change it, but for some reason, it's still showing up.
Well, that's because this really is no show. I don't know what we're. I don't know what
This
we're
is the
doing
best
here.
no show I've ever seen.
All right, here we go.
It
I'm
is
gonna
definitely a show, folks.
No.
This is just an
I-
old
I-
title
I-
that was not
I
updated.
like to. Here's what I'm going to challenge I think our audience.
Probably
is
with a
very-
topic. I think this has got a little racy, so maybe it's best it's not a show.
No. I'm going to next week. I'm going to reveal.
Only for the grown-ups or something.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to reveal. It's a two-person show like Brian's and mine. But next week, I will reveal the show you should be watching, rather than our show. But for now, I have a challenge for our audience tonight. Any question? See, we get a lot of comments. I want a question. I don't care what it's on. I mean, try to keep it related to something like, what's the meaning of life? We'll talk about that. But just something. Trump's P tapes are still out there. There's human stupidity is pretty big. But
Well, the universe itself is stupid, Trev. It really
well,
is.
Here's the
Because
thing,
there's
Trev.
just no intelligence to it. It's just shit hitting.
What I find so interesting about that is,
as far as we can know.
no, I'm just saying, what I find interesting is it would seem, as we emerge out of what supposedly, was, we're going to forget, the rib and Eve and Adam, as we emerge from either the sea, or whatever, that by now we'd be a little bit smarter. And sometimes I do question, collectively, are we that much smarter than we've been at any time? More people have university degrees, right? I don't know. I just think it's kind of disheartening to me that we haven't learned, I guess, the only lesson that is worth learning. You ain't in the world alone. Okay. You gotta learn to kind of stand up for yourself and do your own thing, but at the same time, respect and know that everything you do impacts others. And
You get a question here, Dave. You better answer it, okay?
what would I say? Okay. I need a verb here. I mean, a pronoun here. What would people say to the people at your own funeral? What would I say? I don't know. So just send a one word in, or what would I say at Brian's funeral? Or what would Brian say at my funeral? I don't know. That's a great question. I'm buying time here. As most of you know, I was a teacher in the school that Brian still teaches, and they put Brian way in a secure corner where nobody comes. But they used to have me in the front, and you would see one of the main streets in Bridgeton, my room fronted, and you would see a number of times you would see a funeral procession come by. And that was the only time I really thought about funerals. You'd look at it and you see two cars, and you think, and then you see one with 300. Does that mean maybe the people, they only had the two cars? Maybe they were better people. Maybe they were, but we do that. It's interesting. Brian. Well, let's while we're killing time here for that. Have you ever thought about your own funeral? Not your own death.
Well, I just thought about my own death, but no, I actually think about the dying part more than the dead part, because I've always, philosophically thought we've been dead before in the sense that we weren't living, but it's the dying part that's the bothering me.
Yeah, well, I don't mean
because
bother.
I've seen so much of it that I don't like it.
And there's two
I
schools
can
of
deal with
thought.
being dead because, like I said, we've it took us 13.8 billion years to get
Well,
here
I'm talking
tonight.
about. I'm talking about. The idea of the funeral. It's interesting. Who is that for? We were with friends this week whose family was relatively prominent. They owned a radio station, and so they were very well known, and they were there for centuries. And the husband died first, then the wife, and the wife wanted no service, nothing. And people say, "Oh, we've got to have closure, right? We can't." And she said, "It's my damn funeral." No, it's kind of interesting. Just when you think about that, I mean, who is the service for? I mean, again, two schools of thought. One, it's for closure for others. The other is, it's personal aggrandizement for yourself. I don't know. I mean, I think again but that's kind of an individual choice that, while it may affect others, you can certainly survive it. It's not like.
Well, you're getting trolled here by Gary tonight. I'm telling you.
Well, I'm a little worried. Gary, I've known him for a long time and had a lot of girlfriends early, but he seems to be obsessed with male anatomy tonight. I hope there hasn't been a big change in Gary. I hope. Not because he dated some pretty good-looking girls when I didn't steal them from him. No. Back.
Was Ian Drury right with that song?
Which one?
His famous "Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll" is very. I mean, in the end, like if you at your funeral, is like. I mean, I wouldn't tell anybody to do drugs, but.
I would.
Well,
I mean, look at again. You get into cultures. The Irish hold a wake, right? That's
Right.
what they do. Now they're not drunk and louts like they're portrayed, but they say this is a time to celebrate the life. Somebody we know, so I'm not going to go into it, Brian. I went to their father's funeral. And their father was not a churchgoer, but they had which I wouldn't have a minister, unless one chose to speak at mine. And I don't think any would to do that. But the minister didn't know him, but they had this, and he was reading it off a phone and he mispronounced the father's name and didn't know anything about him. And the son got mad. I said, "Well, why would you get mad at the guy?" He said, "Well, because he didn't." I said, "Well, he didn't know him, So again, obviously the son had a different idea of what the funeral should be. 5 times in the past year not giving David. Yeah, why is that? Who did that, Gary?
Pandemic.
Was that you? God damn it, you used to show up on my doorstep. Where the hell you been, Gary? I miss you. Where the hell you been? Just a pandemic keeps you home? I know you better than that. Life insurance is a scam and so are funerals. And don't get me talking about wedding costs. Yeah. Okay, there's an interesting one. Let's talk about this. Who would have bigger weddings? No, Republicans or Democrats? No. A practical stand, Brian. I really don't understand the idea of huge weddings. To me, if the couple took that money, they'd get a much better start, right?
I got some good ones coming up here.
All right, let's go. Let's go with some.
But you have one.
I want all of them.
Must be some inside information there.
Yeah, it is. Well,
okay, so we'll leave that.
I mean, if people want
I
to
like
do
Osama's. That's really good.
Listen,
Head in the box.
I get right here. I mean, I have the yearbook right here, Gary. I could read it. I mean, I can get it within 3 minutes. It's in the closet.
Now everybody's like thinking about it now. And we have Anthony now. Now they're talking about Gary now.
He's never. I could honestly say he's never knocked at my door at 3 a.m. That I can say. He did once call me at a couple hours after that to let me know he'd been in the lobby and didn't want to wake me. I said, "You dumb son of a bitch! I'd come down and let you in." So Gary, it looks like the fans want you to get your ass down here so you can do a show with us. Get down here. Quit hiding out in Bridgeton, New Jersey.
This one, I don't know what the 8x10 picture or something. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what he's doing there. Gary, you're not. Gary, you're not doing that wacky weed again, are you, Gary? Please tell me you're not doing that wacky weed. Boy, has this been. You know what? We need to get this show scripted.
Like a lot of it's going into like places we haven't expected.
You know what's interesting though? You know what's interesting? I made this before. Isn't it nice to be able to do a show about very serious conditions, but still be able to laugh about them? If Trump were president, would we be having this laughter? Absolutely not. No. Not. And it's not perfect. But as I said earlier, for those who weren't here, went into big news for me. I can now eat inside restaurants again. And yes, I am obsessed with food. I love food. I love eating different ethnic restaurants. But there's a feeling in DC with the few of us that are there, that's coming back. And I think it's reflected, and so the question now becomes, Brian, is it reflected just because Trump's gone, or is it reflected because Trump is gone and Biden is doing a good job? And is Biden doing a good job because he's doing a good job, or would anybody other than Trump? And we'll know in a couple of years. It's going to take some time, to figure all that out. What I would say is, since the pandemic is certainly intertwined with politics, we're going to reach an interesting point in the next few weeks. I don't know New Jersey's status. DC starts Monday. Anyone over the age of 16 who wants it can get a vaccine. Virginia is not quite there yet. A lot of states are moving there. What happens when everybody who wants to get the vaccine has gotten it? Will we have enough for what is being termed herd immunity, somewhere around 80%? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And will things open up without herd immunity?
Right. What do you think, Dave, about this thing with the variants? I mean, do you have any concern about these variants causing problems for younger people or anything like that?
No. Well, look.
Or for us?
Well, no. Here's what it is. Okay. Yes. No. Again, we all make our decisions. A lot of people, and I understand their reasonings, put out on their Facebook pages and other places, I got my first shot, I got my second shot. I chose not to do that. A simple reason, again, I think a lot of people are still trying to get their first shot and haven't been able to do it. I will say this, when you get fully vaccinated, which I've been for a little while now, I was surprised at the sense of relief I have. And I think, again, now we're in that point, Brian, with the pandemic, you can what if forever. Is there a variant out there that'll be so deadly it won't work? And it's possible.
And do we need, that's why I think I probably asked this before to you, Dave, but do you think it would have been an advantage if it had been more deadly, where people would have actually taken it seriously right from the beginning? Or was Trump just so bad that it would have been even worse?
Well, okay, these are just opinions. And put up something before that I wanted to comment, the one you just had up. Have you ever rioted for your rights, Dave? I always consider it a protest, but yes, some people will consider a riot. But not so much for my rights, the rights of soldiers in Vietnam to come home, the rights of African Americans to be considered. And certainly I didn't want to go to Vietnam and fight. But yeah, so I guess you could say yes, I have. So your question was, Brian, about. I'm sorry, I lost it.
Well, in terms of, like you say, had this thing been much more deadly, people would have respected it more. You just start seeing people, younger people, and all that. Well, I think it had to have been that to actually make people think, because death is a good motivator. It really is. One of the things
that I learned, I respect the hell out of science. If you put a scientific truth in front of me and a religious truth, I'm going to go with the scientific truth every time. Having said that, I don't know as much about science as I should. Probably not going to physics and class in college, maybe I would have learned something, but I had other things to do. The idea being, but what I didn't really realize, Brian, and maybe I was stupid or just naive or whatever, this was, I kind of thought, okay, we know how to handle these kinds of things. And we didn't because this was a novo virus, which is something new, right? Now, what we did find out, most the vaccines, they didn't have to start from scratch. It amazes me. It's a medical miracle, if you will. I said, and I was completely wrong, and I've never been so grateful to be wrong, that I thought the best we could hope for was 4 to 5 years for a vaccine, and we got it in a year. No, I'm not going to give credit to Trump.
Gary's on a roll, Mike. It's a nice hat, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to play on words here. Okay, he's going.
You know what? I've been doing that a lot.
He's a Washington.
Well, that's true.
The
other thing I've been doing, just for Mr. Peacock, and since we're going to discuss fashion now, just for a second, I'm trying to go anti-Washington. Nobody in D.C. except tourists wears a Washington hat, so I've been wearing one, and no one in D.C. wears flannel, so I've been wearing that all winter. I got to find something that they don't wear in the summer. I don't know.
Didn't Mr. Chips wear flannel? I don't know.
Yeah, but he's not around here. Everybody around here. So back to the variant and what you could have. We don't know where this thing came from. Okay, I mean, we kind of know it came out of China. Now, I was talking to a person today who once, she's even older than I am. There are a few people in the world, but she was with the Senate. Still has a lot of connections, and she is convinced, and not in a conspiratorial type of way. She's just convinced, as are a lot of people now, that it probably did come out of the lab. But I said to her, and I believe this to be true, if it did come out of that lab, it was not a biological weapon. It wasn't powerful enough. If it did, it was an error that it came out of there. Doesn't make it any different that 500,000 plus people in America have died and millions across the world. I think what it does show, though, to us, and if we don't learn this lesson, we are one world. I mean, what happens in one place affects all of us. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think sometimes it bears repeating. America, once upon a time, could stand to be isolationist. We had the two best natural barriers ever assembled, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't have to worry. We had to worry about Canada, and they're too busy apologizing. And, Mexico, I mean, we didn't, we had one war with them when we took over their land. Now that's not the case. So we have to be concerned and just, I mean, think, what, France is closed down again. The French Open is delayed. We don't even know what's happening so much in Africa.
Yeah, but it's strange here, Dave. We know that the cases are going up in New Jersey, and then Governor Murphy, who's a Democrat, he's opening up the restaurants. So it's kind of going opposite directions.
Well, see, I'm not real sure. That's an excellent point, and I'm not sure I know about it enough to say. But
are they tiring too? I mean,
well, they get pounded. I mean, look. Okay, here's an example. Certainly not scientific. A couple weeks ago, because we were protected, if you will, Judy, I mean, I wanted to go back in the district for a while now, and she went back in, and we walked around 2 nice days. And we walked around a fairly long walk one time from anybody who knows anything about DC. I was actually looking for something for somebody who's doing a book. So we walked from Mount Vernon, not Mount Vernon, where Washington is, but Mount Vernon Square in DC, all the way about 16 blocks down to the White House and back up Pennsylvania Avenue. And just on that walk, we saw 6 restaurants that we had visited that are shuttered for good. That's just on that walk, right? So businesses, they've been horribly hurt. Small businesses, businesses that weren't, there now. Look at the big companies. They made record profits. What, 32? I think it's 31 or 32 firms, all in some way related to something that would benefit from the pandemic. Be it Amazon, Walmart. Certainly it was a record year for hand sanitizer. Those kinds of things.
Right. Some businesses really did flourish,
and they do now. Look. I like being nostalgic about the past. I think it was simpler. But unfortunately, Brian, in this world, the day of small businesses being really, really successful may well be done if your idea of success is to make a lot of money.
Right.
Now, right before the pandemic, this will be interesting to me. I love bookstores of all sizes, and you got to see a return of small bookstores being a community center where people would come. You'd have some book talks there. You'd have coffee clatches there. Some bookstores were starting to specialize, like they do. If anybody's been up in the vicinity of Harvard, I don't know, something like 34 bookstores at one point. Like this one was, medieval romances, and this one was, specialty things like that. Of course, they've all been closed. Um, Movie theaters again. Certainly, they didn't do well, but Netflix, and all of those at home. I mean, But Brian, I ask you, and anybody else chime in. When's the last time you've been to a movie theater? Can you remember the last one?
I think the last time I was at a movie theater was I saw that movie about World War One where went from black and white to color.
Do you know what year that was, Brian?
I don't probably know. I would say if this is 2021, I would say that was probably 2017.
Well, I remember the last one I went
16 maybe.
Yeah, the last one I went to was whatever the Star Wars was that was released in December of 2019 with my grandchildren. So, and I didn't think about it much. So, I mean, I could have gone to a movie in January, February, and the beginning of March, right, in 2020. I don't know, not because I'd be afraid to go to a theater now, but I'm not real sure. I mean, I wasn't a big theater goer anyway. Now, live theater, oh yeah, concerts, I want to see those return. Now, Anthony, that's interesting. Okay, the Post ran a story about the difference, between Nationals can have 5,000. That's their limit here for the baseball game. Arlington, 38,000. Now, terrible experiment, but we're going to see. In other words, big events once were super spreaders. Are they now? I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, it stands to reason it will, right? What was it, Sturgis? That was when they had the big biker thing out there. Certainly, spring break week.
Right.
You're running around without masks. I think it was Anthony or somebody. The problem becomes now, people. Okay, another anecdotal story. I don't know if it means anything. We have a gallery that has survived, an art gallery right in our underground, and I'm friendly with the assistant director. And two elderly women, or older, I shouldn't say older women, came in with no mask, right? And she said, "Ladies, you're gonna have to put your mask on." She said, "Oh no, we're vaccinated." And she said, "But I'm not." So that's going to be another division. Here's one for you, Brian, tonight, and everybody chime in. Another division seems to be breaking down somewhat along Democratic and Republican lines. Our vaccine, they're using the term passport, so we'll use it. It's not exactly correct. Are vaccine passports good things and necessary? What do you think, Brian?
Well, it won't be enforced, so I would say it wouldn't matter.
Au contraire. It won't, not to be pulled over. What they're talking about is if you want to get on a cruise ship, if they're talking about if you want to get on an airplane.
You certainly want to have a passport. For example, if somebody had a venereal disease, you definitely want to know whether somebody was clean or not. So I guess you'd say yeah.
And of course, the argument is it's always
You're
interesting
on somebody's rights, but
and you know what they're bringing up. Well, and what they're bringing up isn't that like the Yellow Star of David in put on in the Holocaust? And my argument with that, I'm not sure where I stand yet on it, but my argument with that is no, that was by the power to isolate a group, for extermination. I don't think anybody's calling. I haven't seen anybody call for extermination yet for those who don't have the vaccine. Schools, how are they going to open? 5 colleges or 6 now are going to require the vaccine to go back. And see, Anthony, that's the thing where I differ with a lot of environmentalists. I understand they pollute the shit out of things, but I like to see other cultures and it's a way for me to see 5 or 6 or 7 relatively easy. So, we all have our lines that blur. I know this will horrify. I'm very pro-gay, but I do eat at Chick-fil-A. I mean, how do I do that? Well, this is, again,
Well, it depends on the sandwich you like. There's
well,
one
no, you know what,
like.
Brad? I thought about
I know
that.
Judy likes chicken salad, so
No. I mean, you're joking, but I'm being serious. So why am I okay with that? Well, the selfish reason is this: I've never had an order gone wrong at Chick-fil-A, and we don't eat at McDonald's, but I do get sometimes Judy will get a half and half iced tea, and we went to 3 in New Jersey. Every one of them got it wrong. And I don't know if that's a statement. The other thing is, and so you have to be careful. If you don't eat at Chick-fil-A, okay, yes, you're not funding their anti-gay strands, but also you're also threatening the occupations of the people. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard. I really admire anyone who can have a stand and keep it constant throughout. Where would you buy anything? You know what I mean? Almost, right? Where would you buy, any Ben and Jerry's ice cream? Maybe, right? I don't know, So it's very hard. So, I don't like to be a hypocrite, but sometimes, you go, hey, Dave, you're attacking the Republicans for doing X, Y, and Z, and are you any different? Yeah, boycotts don't work. And we're going to see Rare Medium.
I don't know.
Well, no, I would agree with Rare Medium up to a point. An effective boycott works, right? Now, what is an effective boycott? I mean, I don't think it was, like I said, I don't think it was the goodness of the heart that Delta and Coke and what the other places are jumping on board. Now there's a simple solution. Now we're back to where we started, Brian. See, there is, what should I say? It is the great circle of life. Joe Manchin could put a stop to all that.
He could.
Joe Manchin and your dream lover, cinema. And that would give them 50 votes. Kamala would come in, assuming everybody would hold. I don't think you would get a Republican vote in there. And then you could have a national voting act bill. And a lot of people don't understand. What a federal bill does is that provides the lowest you can go. You can't go lower than that, right? So that would assure. And even there, I don't have a problem. I mean, personally, who cares what I have a problem? I don't have a problem with a national voting card as long as it's easy to get. And you meet all the requirements, which is basically 18, whatever the voting age is, and a resident of the state. But you can't have it one place in Texas that you have to go to get it, right? You can't. I see I've got people here. We're gonna have a show just why I'm gonna convince them why it's great to go. Great to go on cruise ships. A lot of your people know Paul, right? Your friend Paul, Brian. And man, he and I we've had some really interesting discussions because he is 100% opposed to cruise ships. And,
they are. They're just kind of nasty, Dave. They're really nasty. I mean, I know you like it. I was on a cruise when I was around 11, and I liked it. It was one of my favorite trips. However, I'm just saying they're nasty. Those things are just.
Okay, airplanes are less nasty.
Well,
cars in bulk. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just saying, what is it? I mean, yeah, okay. So I guess what I'm saying, for lack of a better term, is we pick our poisons.
Why would you? I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of if you're trying to get away from it all, you're basically on this automobile of some sort that has, a city of people all close together, and it's very dangerous. I mean, it's really dangerous, and especially.
Okay, are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me? This is going to be interesting. I don't know. So I'm saying, do you think more people are killed in driving accidents in America or die on cruise ships per year?
Definitely, there's more people driving than there are. I mean, it's hard to.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. Does that mean anything? I mean, how many people die?
Well, if you're a fish, it means something.
Well, exactly. Okay. And
Because if you're not thinking about the fish, then I guess it's okay. But if that fish or the coral reef matters, then
all
it
right,
does
so
mean something.
let's play the other
And
side of it.
also,
I'll
don't forget
play.
that those islands, if you talk about like the Abaco Islands, all of those
Mhm.
Bahamian islands, those people live there and they're sick of it.
Oh, who the hell cares about them?
Look,
No, I mean,
I get the enjoy. Dave,
no,
I'm not
I'm
trying to
not trying to,
crucify you.
and
I
I don't
actually
care.
agree with Paul in
No,
this.
I don't care. I mean, no offense.
Mhm.
I'm saying that what I do, I'm not justifying it necessarily. What I'm saying is an interest of mine that I think does make me a better human being is to see more cultures, and it helps me see more cultures in that sort of way. And
Well,
the
that's part of
buffets
the
are
problem,
good.
though. I mean, it used to be that people would do a lot of traveling to see more culture, but travel in itself it becomes a very
I
negative
didn't
aspect
say
of the
to go to
planet.
the private islands. When Judy and I take a cruise, it's we
No,
take
I'm just talking about any kind of travel in general. When you
well,
have billions of people and then a lot of people are constantly traveling, that's a real problem for the planet. I mean, that's another story at another time, but
well,
everything you do, your breathing
no art,
affects something else. Okay,
no
there are
art,
consequences, and there are
no
great
argument with
consequences for that
no
movement.
argument with that. And I think again, as you know, trying to be practical, I'm not putting it off, but right now, I think that's a little bit beyond my pay grade. I mean, tomorrow, if the United States or the world said cruise ships are completely harmful to the environment and we're going to stop them, would I shed a tear? No. Okay, it's not something. It's like with the masks. They said put on a
I
mask. I
think in
put on a
general,
mask.
people have to. I'm just thinking when you have this many people on the planet, Dave. You're talking about the cruise ships are this and the planes. Yeah, it's all right. Eventually, people are going to have to just find, design these city parks nicely
Oh,
so that you
I
don't have to go traveling to see something nice.
well, my argument there would be but it's not traveling to see something nice. I would submit if somebody said to me they were to travel for 4 years extensively worldwide or go to a university for 4 years, I would say to travel worldwide. I think the education you get on
I
that
mean, if there were fewer
is much more.
people, again, it has to do with population. I think it all comes down to population in the end. We've got to limit population, and the problem is that it's in the developing countries where the population is
But you know what's
increasing.
interesting about that? I just read an article. I know I'm not going to sound like, oh, I just read an article where COVID comes from the stars. No, um, that now there's some people that are concerned we don't have enough people in the world. Uh,
Well, who's saying that?
they're just thinking that
Jehovah's
well,
Witnesses,
yeah. No, I'm kidding. No, America is one of the
Christian
places.
scientists,
If we don't have
Orthodox
immigration,
Jews. Like
we can't. Yeah, well,
it
yeah.
just
I
makes
mean,
no
who's
sense.
more
I
harmful?
mean, it's kind of obvious that people just rip the planet apart, and the more people you have, the danger is great. I mean, 700 years ago or 1,000 years ago, those things didn't really matter. It didn't really
Well,
affect
they
us,
mattered. They mattered to individual states. You're right. I
right?
mean, we didn't. No
So
one. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, and there you get back to another basic way. You have to decide: is it the end, the beginning, the
well, how about
beginning of
this?
the end?
Why can't we? This is going to, look, it's 4 minutes in the show left here, but if you can get,
Green is good.
if
Green
you
is
can,
always good,
if
Yoda.
you can get a virtual reality out of this planet, like if you can really develop virtual reality where you think you're on that cruise, where it actually feels like the cruise, the real thing. Well, hold it again, but if you can create it, that your brain is absolutely fooled, then
Can't, Brian.
at this,
Can't because
don't I
because
wouldn't say that. I wouldn't
no,
say
I
that.
would. I would say that, and here's why I say that. Anything created through machinery of any type has an automatic artificiality to it. That what you've done is you've given up your
We're
right.
machines ourselves in a way. Okay.
Well, you and I go back to this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, next week we're going to talk about free will and fate as it applies to Matt Gates's putting his dingle in places where he shouldn't have put his dingle.
Stumble.
Whatever. Listen, I see by our count the clock is ticking down. So we'll try to sum up. Once again, with a week off last week, nothing in my mind has changed, and so it's this. I am much more optimistic that we're heading in a better direction than this time last year,
Agreed.
no matter where we were.
Agreed.
Number two, we can't rest on our laurels and say it's okay. For example, if the only outcome I can see that is just, fair, and common sense, if your favorite law enforcement official is not found guilty of murder, heaven help us all, right?
Right.
So there's always those things out there.
Well, I think what's what I've seen there. I think it's going to go in the right direction for that trial. They've done a great job so far. But
I don't disagree
unless
with
they're
that.
just
I'm
looking for that one juror to hang.
Well,
the,
you got to remember,
the
you got to remember, one jury, one juror. That's all. And, then the other thing would be, as we said tonight, and I continue, not really interested in being united at this point with the Republicans until they show some inclination to say to Mitch McConnell, go F yourself. We will vote the way we want.
Well, you got to tell Joe Manchin that and see if he can get.
Well,
anybody from West Virginia, you want to do something and you want to complain. Go to your guy and change him.
What I would ask Joe Manchin is, which is more important? Very simple question. Which is more important? The right for people to have the right to vote, or the right of the Senate to have the filibuster? Boils down to one question. If you want the filibuster, you're not going to have a way to have a national, Voting Rights Act. So, Brian, I'm gonna shut up for real tonight. One shout out. I mentioned it before. If you're looking for something to read, people, a good person to look at is Kurt Anderson. You don't have to read Fantasyland first. They're not sequential. But if you really want to know, I think right now, it's the best I've read of how did the Republican Party get the power that it now has. I'm about halfway through the book, and it's very logically laid out from Reagan, and we're still in Reagan years. Yeah.
All right, Dave.
Brian, have a good week.
Thank you, and I want to thank Dave and everybody else who gave me condolences. I think in general, when your parents are gone and you reflect on your life with them, especially when you're somebody like myself who's an atheist, and you say, okay, well, I'm never going to see these people again. It doesn't look like I am. Okay, I have no illusions, but it's very, very sad in the sense that you've developed a relationship with these people, and then it just blocks off, and we all go through that. I mean, at least most of us do, and then you get in this phase where you move on, but you move to the next place in line, and that's also part of it too. But I've always, ever since I was a kid, I used to think about the day that was going to come, and then one day that rainy day comes, and it's kind of just like a rite of passage where you're on your own now, so to speak. Even because when you're with these two people your whole life, it shapes who you are in many cases. So I was lucky enough to have parents that tried to get me to meet intelligent people. Don't expect all the answers from your parents and those kind of things. But anyway, I think it's just kind of a shared experience that we all have. Is that when they go, you're liberated in a certain sense. That life is different. But on the other hand, you bury your memories in a certain sense. Not everybody does, but you have to go in that direction now, and just to one of those things, and it just happens. And I wonder myself how much I will change now that's happened. Maybe not at all, but in any case, I want to thank everybody, and we will be back next week with another shoe, and we'll see who causes problems this week, and then we'll take it there. So thanks everybody, and we will see you next week. when the outro comes. There was an outro.
D'un lion, il y a une